any other equation. You've got income, you've got expenses. And so if you feel like you're getting a little bit of a late start, if you can cut down expenses and live as little below your means as possible, and maximize, because again, oftentimes you're at the highest, whatever your income is later in life, that's probably the peak of where you're going to be. So the best thing to do is reduce those expenses as much as possible and still tuck money away, because that money in the market still has an opportunity to compound over time.
That's interesting, and you broke that down very well, I think, because there's a lot of us out there that's in that position, and you nailed it right on the head, because to me, I didn't really get my stride till I got in my 50s. Yeah. It was 40s were okay. About the time I got in my 40s, to you hit it right on the head. By the time I got in my 40s, people was kind of listening to me. They just say, "Well,
you're still a baby to some people, and you're too old to some." Right? Yeah,
because that's why. Like I be calling the younger people now. They be like, "I'm young." I'll be like, "Man, you 40-something years old. You ain't young." Now I've been 42, and I know you're getting closer to me. We're a lot more closer than we were apart before. So that kind of thing, I think, is very interesting. I think you nailed that, and I think anybody out there listening should really take her advice on that, because when you sit back and think about it, that is exactly how it goes. Yeah. Because right now, me and my wife right now, we're okay. We striding now because we done lived through all of the stuff that, like you said, the paychecks, all the other necessary things that you had to get to this point. So
one thing I did say I would add is protect your health, because one of the most expensive things as you age is medical issues. Yeah. And so as best you can, try and live a healthy lifestyle. Maximize taking advantage of health benefits that you have access to, because one of the fastest ways to blow through the savings and the wealth that you have amassed is to have some sort of health crisis that is persistent, that doesn't go away.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask a crazy question. I'm going to give you yours. Let you go, Doc.
I didn't want to jump off of what before we go back. Before you go to your crazy question.
Okay, go ahead.
And I want to say, Danielle, I think that just what you said is with the 20s, the 40s, the 60s, and when you get to that, is you hit the nail on the head, if we can say it like that. And thinking about my own life and my own experience. But what I also look at is the access and the information to know when I'm 20 that this is what I'm supposed to do. And so what would you recommend? How do we get this information out? How do we in this room, sure, we talking to our friends and family, we're sharing the information, but when we talk about building wealth for the Black community, and when we talk about the Black community as a whole, how do we get these 20-year-olds to understand let's start saving now. Let's start putting away now. Yeah. And so, and I'll give an example. This is with my nephew. My nephew he'd probably be mad at that blasting, but he lives in Arizona, so he can't hear me no way, unless he go online. But him and I have had these conversations because very intelligent, and money is his driving force. Like he's pushing to be wealthy. Yeah. And I'd say to him all the time, you can't keep spending and you think you're going to get to where you want to get to. Right. And that's what I'm saying. Like, he listens, and I send books, and I'm like, I need you to read this. I need you to read that. But how do we get this information out to the 20-year-olds, the 40-year-olds, so that they have the knowledge?
Well, I think one of the things that I am sad about in our community, I think we've really lost the intergenerational family ecosystems.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
You know, so having someone who has already been where you're trying to go to be able to be in the family with you to kind of talk about these things, we know that the generations are actually getting closer together in our family. So instead of having the grandma that's 40 years, 60 years older than you, the grandma is like 35 years older than you. And so she's still working or he's still working while the grandkids are kind of coming up. And so it's a bit of a different way that information and advice is cascaded down. And then the broader community also, because there's not a lot of spaces where we connect intergenerationally. The church used to be one of those places. And so I think it's incumbent upon us to try and recreate as many intergenerational spaces as possible, because that's where a lot of knowledge and idea sharing can happen. The other thing that I think is another place that we can do it is just within our own ecosystems. It's about your nephew. And sometimes we think that they're not listening. They may not be taking the advice right now, but they are hearing us. And I'll give you a prime example. I remember my great aunt, who is still living, she's 89 years old. When I was in the 6th grade, my first semester of school, I had gotten like all A's and 2 B's, and I showed her my report card. And she's like, if you can get all A's and 2 B's, you can get all A's. I'm like, anybody else will say congratulations except for her. So she's like, if you get straight A's, I'll take you and your family to dinner. Now, there were 8 of us, so 6 kids and 2 parents. So that's a whole lot. I'm like, all right, well, I could do this. I got straight A's that next grading period. She took us all to dinner. I sit next to her at dinner. She pulls out her American Express to pay for the dinner. And she tells me at 12 years old, you never pay interest on anything that you wear or eat. She did not explain anything further. That's all she said. She planted a seed at 12 years old. My first full-time job outside of working for my parents was at a credit card company, and I learned about interest. That whole time I had no clue what she was talking about. So your nephew, you are planting seeds, whether he's taking them or not, whether he seems like he's listening or not. At some point, it will click for him, and he'll start taking that advice. So I would say, don't be weary in well-doing. Keep saying the things, keep saying the things, keep saying the things. We listen eventually.
I love it. And I also love, and of course I have to add a shameless plug, coming out in June is a book that deals in intergenerational work.
No.
And so here it is. Out of the shadows.
There it is.
Of course I'm going to throw it out there.
Okay.
And we talk about intergenerational work, and it's really looking at how do we bridge this gap between generations, specifically in ministry and women in ministry. So yes, you all will be about you. Of course, you're going to hear when you can pick it up, but just since we were talking about intergenerational, I had to tie it in.
We'll definitely let you guys know where you can get that book at.
So let me hear this question.
Oh,
Ken,
no,
what was that?
I'm going to go to a different one, because last week we were talking about African Americans and our spending power and the ability for us to make a difference in how we spend our dollars and things. And there was a thing that's going on that says that African Americans spend trillions of dollars every year on all kinds of goods and services and things of that nature. And then there was a book that was wrote by a gentleman, his name is escaping me, that said that that's not necessarily true, that African Americans, based off of our economy, based off of the jobs, based off of the fact that most of the black community receives social services dollars and things of that nature, may say different. So you are the money lady. Is the man right or is he wrong?
I would have to look at whatever.
Yeah, and I'm going to hold it to that.
Yeah.
Let's take it. Do you believe in the fact that we have trillions of dollars we spend?
We do have a significant amount of spending power.
See, told you.
And again, and the thing that would be interesting for whatever the argument would be against that is, even if we're using some sort of government subsidy to spend, it's still spending power. It's still money, right? You're if you have some sort of card or check or subsidy, it's in your hands. You get to make the spending choice of what you do with it. So if you decide to go to Days versus versus Whole Foods,
that's a
hell of a spin, but
that's what it is. Right? Dollars are still being spent, right?
That's definitely true.
But that makes you look at things from a different lens too.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, this is the argument that I have that some people feel like is very outlandish. Is you don't go to any community as a new business. I was just at a 50 Club event at Union Club last night, and it was a gentleman that runs a business called The Link, which has like $30 billion of, or 30 billion square feet of industrial warehouse space. So they hold most of the products for like Amazon, Home Depot, Walmart, do like last mile delivery. They have the buildings that do that. They don't go into any community and say, I don't want any incentives. They say, give me every single incentive you have, right? But when people are struggling financially and they need some sort of incentive for the government to get back on their feet, we call it a government handout. But every business owner that I know that's successful goes into the community and demands elected officials to provide them with incentives.
Yeah.
So if you're struggling financially, demand all the incentives that you are due, because you need assistance to get back stable, to get back into community contributing in a equitable way. And if we think that it's justifiable to give someone that's a billionaire some additional incentive to help spur economic activity, why wouldn't we give someone who's struggling financially financially some incentive to help them spur economic activity.
You know, because Elon Musk is one of the biggest benefactors of governmental contracts and things of that nature. That if, like you say, if some other people may go after those same contracts, will be looked at as saying, "Oh, you give them a handout," or they're getting a one-up because they're getting
their
that,
DEI,
or their DEI, or something to that nature. And speaking of DEI, how do you think the legal structure and regulations or framework are influencing the black wealth in today's society?
So I think that we had, just like any other period of white lash, right, in our history, where black folks start to advance to a certain level, and then we changed policies to make it harder for us to take advantage of the things that we justifiably should have access to. I think that's what we have experiencing right now. But like in any of those other periods, we find a way to maneuver and figure out how to navigate through that. And so what you see in a lot of spaces is, while we're not calling things DEI as much anymore, we're talking about maybe equity as opposed to inclusion. We're talking about small business instead of saying minority business. There are ways for us to still navigate, and I think that what people were hoping is that we would all recoil and get afraid and act like we can't maneuver, but this is not the hardest thing we've ever been through as a community, and so I think we're resilient and we're finding ways to still push through.
You know, I wish I had read. I didn't get a chance. You know how people interrupt you when you're reading and then you never go back?
Yeah.
But Joy Reid and did anybody see that? And Don Lemon talking about the fact that those who the category that's been most hurt is white college educated men from the DEI rollbacks.
Really?
Yes. And I didn't get to finish. I got to go back and pull up. Did you see that headline?
Read it,
yeah, and that was from Joy Reid and Don Lemon. So I'm really curious to see what took place and what was said. But just thinking of pivoting. And very often we don't think about pivoting, and coming from the diversity, equity, and inclusion world, we have to pivot, and we still have to focus on the community as a whole, and not let fear keep us from pulling back. Because in the corporate spaces, in many of the corporate spaces and the higher education spaces and all those spaces, the fear is keeping them. Yeah. And so how do we push forward and still understand, do the work, help to improve the wealth of the community? So I appreciate you saying that. What do you think, and this is something that I know Ken had posed or thought about, is the trends. And what do we see that's happening from that historical lens 20, 30 years ago? What's still happening now when we talk about the social, historical, political lens that still impact the wealth of the black community?
Well, I think one of the things that we often kind of glaze over is the fact that most of us have somebody in our life that's still living that didn't have full rights, citizenship in this country, right? So my mother just turned 71, and that means that she was born without the legal right to vote. That's my mother. This is not something in 18 whatever. Wow. This is not something when everything was in black and white. This is full and living color. And so when we discount that and don't acknowledge the fact that in the 1970s, women couldn't get credit on their own without a man co-signing. Women couldn't get an apartment without, it could be their son, it could have been their brother. You had to have a man on the application. So to be in 2025 and acting as if, you know, everything should just be okay and that we are going to be at economic parity, we've not even been in an environment for, 50, 60 years where we've been able to participate, right? So that context is important. And then you compound things like redlining, you compound things like the fact that veterans came home and they didn't get access to the GI Bill to be able to buy homes and go to college and all of those things. And Social Security, for some folks in our family, the jobs that they were in were eliminated and excluded from Social Security benefits. So we became people who were legally free in this country, but weren't afforded all the same rights and access. And so that's why I really encourage us to think about working together. The only way we are going to fight this system is if we do it together, because it was not designed for us to win again, definitely not individually, but we have been able to succeed when we've done things collectively. And so if I was to give anybody advice right now about how we pivot, is more of us doing businesses that can succeed together. And so if I need somebody doing marketing and you need somebody doing marketing, how do we go in together and hire that person so that way we can pay them the thing that they need for them to be able to survive, and maybe they can support 4 or 5 independent people instead of them trying to find that on their own. And I think that if we could just kind of think more of that way, we would be able to, again, build more businesses that are successful in generating revenue.
You know, that's a hell of an idea. And I think that the President's Council can possibly lead that kind of discussion.
That's
and
our
helping us
focus.
do
Yeah.
that. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, then we're going to get into what you're here to talk about, the President's Council. 2 questions. How important for the young person out there that's listening, and the old person, as it relates to credit in your life? And, you know, me and Dr. Burton said the same thing, because we kind of grew up that way. It was like, oh, you ain't seen my credit report, because we were trying.
Now, I'm better.
That's
My
better
credit
as
is
we
great
say we
now.
get older. But in the younger age, we were that way.
Right.
So how important is that? Because we had to do, at least I did, had to do a lot of work, and continuing to do a lot of work to keep it right or to get it right. So that's one. And then the other big one, life insurance. And the importance of, is life insurance a tool that black folks should have been or could use to help build generational wealth? So your opinion on both of those.
So the first one, credit is absolutely important. I understand why sometimes people take the posture of like, it doesn't matter. I don't have anything that I plan to do with my credit. I can do whatever I want to do with it. Again, I think back to the Bible, like your name is important. And so credit is a portion of your name, and whether or not you intend to honor the obligations that you take on. And so use it wisely. It can be a phenomenal tool, be it the ways that you're able to get access to capital for your business, the ability to, again, acquire real estate. Can you do those things with cash? Absolutely. But depending upon the industry and the sector that you're in, you may need to borrow money. So I have a good friend that owns one of the largest auto dealers in the country. You're not carrying all those dealerships on cash. You've got to be able to borrow money to run that kind of business. And so many of the sectors that we desire to be in, you're going to need credit. And a lot of people are like, oh, I don't need personal credit. I have business credit. You are going to personally guarantee even up to millions of dollars. It's just how it works. And somebody on the internet telling you that you're going to get a Navy Federal Credit Union and go buy a G-Wagon and whatever are telling you a story, right? Don't believe it. Protect your personal credit. But if you do happen to have a misstep, because most of us have at some point in time, it is one of the easiest things to repair, but it does take time. Yeah. And the shortcuts are going to cost you money and not get you what they promise. And you're going to end up spending money to be right back in the same situation. So talk to your creditors. Imagine yourself if somebody owed you money. You just want to get paid back. All right. So if that person called you and said, Danielle, listen, I know I owe you $50,000. Can I get on a payment plan? Can we figure this out? You would much more appreciate that than every time I see Ken, he go across the street and act like he don't know he owe me money. Right. So let's just have a conversation, right? And Ken don't owe me any money, guys. That's just an example.
She wouldn't be here. I'd be still dodging it.
And what was the second question you asked?
Life insurance. How important life insurance?
Okay, yes. So it's interesting because when I was an advisor, I had an older guy in our office that talked about the way he felt about insurance. That actually changed my mindset a bit. So you want to have insurance before you have assets to pass on. So if you think about it, if you don't have any assets and you pass away, your family is still going to have obligations, especially I think about when I was, my sons were growing up. I was the sole breadwinner. That they would not have had anything else if I passed away. And so it's important to have a life insurance policy that could replace the income that they would have traditionally needed from me in the household in order for them to be financially independent. Once they got to 26, in my mind, it's like, okay, they'll be out of college by that point. And so they would need less income from me because they would be on the path. And so my life insurance policy kind of planning could change because I had other assets that I could pass on to them. They have a home that they would be able to have, retirement accounts that are in my name that would then pass on to them. And so you want to think about having the amount of insurance, especially while you have young children, that can replace the income that they would need from you. As you continue to grow more assets, oftentimes insurance can be used as a way to protect those assets that you have from something happening. So let's say you get sued or you prematurely pass away, you can protect the wealth that you already have with life insurance. Do you have people that will say, yeah, you need to go get $1 million, $2 million insurance policy? Absolutely, you can do that if you can afford it. And I try not to give this absolute advice where people walk around like, well, I'll never be able to do that. If you could pass $100,000 on to your family, that's a tremendous head start. So don't feel like if you can't afford $1 million life insurance policy that you're not doing anything, right? So get as much insurance as you can afford, so long as it's going to replace the income that you might have been able to provide your family while you were living. And then as a wealth generation or passing on resources to the next generation, get as much as you can afford to leave to the next generation.
You know, I'll tell y'all a quick story. When I about a few, maybe about 10, 15, got to be about 20 years. I'm just getting there. These days are coming quick. About 20 years ago, I had an insurance guy. His name was High Swarsky. I ain't going to never lie. I remember an old Jewish guy from up in Cleveland Heights area. But what was strange about it, I met this guy from a guy, matter of fact, is when I bought my house. I had bought my house up in Cleveland Heights, and the guy I bought the house from, my loan officer, said, Ken, do you got life insurance? And I said, no, I don't think I did. At that point, I don't think I did. And he was like, you should get life insurance and you should go see my man, High Swarsky. And he sent me to go see this guy. I go see High Swarsky. Swarsky sit me down and he hits me with exactly what you said, Danielle, because I'm going to get you on the money. You fired today. He said exactly what you said. He told me then, he said, Ken, you need to get a big insurance policy. You need to get this insurance policy now because at that time, all the girls and my son were young. And he kept saying, you're going to need it. And, I mean, every month I was breaking my butt to make this payment. Payment was over $200 a month. And I'm like, man, this guy killing me. But this was what was strange about Swarsky. And some of the older folks know, he was an old insurance guy. Every month, if he wasn't knocking on my door, he was calling me asking for this $200. And if it wasn't for Mr. Swarsky, I'm going to tell you, I would have dropped that policy years and years ago. But he would come and make me feel so bad about, oh, you need to do this for these girls and you ain't going to make it. You're going to be around what you're going to leave for these girls. And he stayed on me about that. But what he said was true. He said, Ken, we're going to do this now because they're young. But hopefully they're going to get married and find some guy who's going to take care of them and you ain't got to do this no more. So we're going to go high up in these first years, and as we get older and as they get older, the payment's going to come down because you don't need to take care of them when they get older. To your point, he didn't say that, you know, the other things, but that's where he was getting at, where he was saying that, you know, you're going to have other assets and things that you're going to leave them, you and your wife. So you don't need it. So when you were younger, and here's the other thing that I'll tell the young people, if you're young and you're 21 and you're younger age, the insurance is dirt cheaper. So you can go out and get the insurance for $1 million, $2 million if you want. Don't tell anybody you got it, I would advise. And once you got it, then go ahead and you can make the payments. And when you get older, you can work your way out. So time is going and giving me the flash. We got 5 minutes. So Danielle, I want you to end the show. We usually end it around, but I'm going to let you end us today with a couple things. One, I want you to tell us about what the President's Council is up to and what you guys got going there. Give us some advice of what you think we ought to do. Save a little time for Doctor to end us off with a closing, and then we'll be up out of here. So go ahead.
So the President's Council is the engine for Black business growth in Northeast Ohio. We're celebrating 30 years next year, so we're going to be doing a lot to kind of tell the story about the President's Council, why it's so important, and the impact that we hope to continue to have for the next 30 years plus. But we're really kind of centered on a couple of core things. Advocacy and policy for Black-owned businesses. If you think about some of the barriers that I talked about earlier, we need organizations like the President's Council to be evaluating current legislative policy that makes it hard for us to be able to thrive and grow as business owners. And that's at the local, state, and federal level. So that's a big core of our mission, focusing on access to capital and access to markets. So using our influence through the network of the President's Council to connect business owners to more business opportunities and high impact networking. Again, sometimes people discount networking, but the reality is I don't know who in this room might be able to connect me me to the next opportunity, or who might have an opportunity for me. And so really trying to push our entrepreneurs to join the business chamber. You can go on to our link tree off of Instagram and find the link to be able to join. It'll give you more information. But the more of us that are in community with each other, again, we can do more together. And so that's really, really just the drum that we're trying to be, is that it's collaboration over competition. There's enough money out here to be made. We're arguing over small potatoes, and I'm in a room with folks that are talking about billion-dollar transactions. So if we're not arguing over billion-dollar transactions, what are we fighting about?
Right.
We got to get together more so we can be doing those billion-dollar transactions together.
Okay. Anything you want to leave us before you go? Closing remark?
Closing remarks is I'm grateful for these kind of platforms, because I think it's important for us to not gatekeep, and that we got to make sure that at every level of community we're connecting with folks that are interested in being entrepreneurs, and make sure they have access to the resources to scale and grow their businesses, so we're not out here struggling by ourselves.
And how can I get more information about the President's Council?
You can email us at info@thepresidentscouncil.com. Visit our link tree, which is linktr.ee/TPC_CLE. It's got information on how to join the business chamber and more about what we got going on. And follow us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at The President's Council.
Doc.
Yeah, I love it. Danielle, thank you so much for being here with us this afternoon. This has been a wealth of information. How I see that pun, it has been a wealth of information. And I want to say is that, having worked in insurance, I worked for Nationwide Insurance for 5 years. Yes, another thing, I'm licensed in property and casualty, but it taught me the benefit of insurance. And so when we talk about life insurance, I used to tell my family, I was like, I'm worth more dead than alive, but don't try to kill me. But in that, thinking about how do we build wealth? And so I challenge our listening audiences to think about, what are you doing to build wealth for yourself, for your family, for your legacy, for the community? And I'm going to leave you with Danielle's words. If you are not arguing over a billion-dollar transaction, then what is it about? And what is it for?
So I told y'all we was going to be rich before we left here. Y'all rich with all kinds of information and all kinds of things that you can do in order to better your life. And Danielle, I want to thank you for coming on our show. It was a wealth of knowledge and information. We were looking for a feel-good program, because we've been doing some really heavy conversation lately, and this was a really good feel-good conversation we had. I'm going to challenge you that you're back in town to at least come in at least once a month and give us some information on how we can make our business better, how we can do better as entrepreneurs and that kind of thing. We would definitely welcome that conversation anytime that you would want, and give us information so we can help better our community.
Put me on the schedule. I'll be here.
Yeah, and if there's any events that the President's Council are doing that we need to get out, yep, definitely.
Absolutely.
And make me rich, Danielle.
Oh, we're going to be rich. She's going to make us rich. You've been listening to Strategic Moves radio show with Dr. Heather Burton and Kenn Dowell, and our special guest today was none other than Danielle Sydnor. I appreciate you coming on the program, and anybody, next Tuesday we'll be right back again. So until then, peace.
See you next Tuesday.
Thank you.
Good job, Danielle.
Yeah.
What's up, Cleveland? It's time to turn up the conversation. Tune in to the Strategic Moves with Kenn Dowell Radio Show.